I can remember that first week of December, we had a big gap in between games, and Mo just fed it to us. Like hard practice with bag skates, and I can remember Roddy turning to Bates and I, and he's like, I'll handle this. I'll set the pace. I'll lead the way. You guys just stay on my heels, kind of thing. It was like, oh man, we're in for a day.
Well, that team was an amazing collection of young players who were just cutting their teeth, but by the time the playoffs rolled around, were really important. Older players who brought a ton of credibility to the organization, to a team that needed some relevance, that needed a real move at that time.
For me, it was like, looking back at a time when I really started to feel what teamwork, what, camaraderie to the next level, what sacrifice, selflessness looked like in '94 in that Vancouver team. And I saw all those qualities just bubble up to the surface when I got in that locker room for the first 7 days.
Rafalski gets it once again. Inside it goes, a man free in front. Riche, what a stop! The rebound! What a save again! Kevin Weeks!
I just remember the momentum train coming. Like once it is a real thing when you can feel it coming, we were definitely on it in that game.
That you had all these Leafs fans come down and probably come down with an attitude like, why are we going to hockey in North Carolina? And they all walked away, because they had identified and fallen in love with this tailgating experience. Ron McLean and Don Cherry, I think in talking to them, the friends that they are, that's when they started to, really say, this is a pretty cool spot.
Welcome to the Canes Corner Podcast with your host, Adam Gold. The Canes Corner Podcast is a part of the Capital Broadcasting Podcast Network. And now, here's Adam.
The Carolina Hurricanes were just 4 years into their stint in North Carolina when things started to turn in their favor. It really began in a playoff series against the New Jersey Devils in the spring of 2001. You remember the one in which Ron Francis and Shane Willis were both knocked out, but the team didn't buckle? Hi, this is Adam Gold, and welcome to the 25th Anniversary Canes Corner Podcast. Thanks to our friends at the Aluminum Company of North Carolina, and thanks to you for coming along for this walk down an icy memory lane. I was sitting one row from the glass, just to the inside of the Hurricanes' offensive blue line, when Scott Stevens knocked Ron Francis into the next season. It was the blow that should have ended the series right there. The Devils were one of the top teams in the NHL, having won the Stanley Cup 2 years prior and would again in 2003. They were physically intimidating on top of simply being great. But even after Francis and Willis saw their series end in Game 3, the Hurricanes managed to win Game 4, went back to New Jersey and took Game 5, forcing a Game 6 back at the Entertainment and Sports Arena. That the Hurricanes lost that game isn't nearly as important as that they won over a huge swath of fans. And when the 2002 playoffs rolled around, it was a very different Carolina team and a very different result. 2006 was the Carolina Hurricanes' crowning achievement. I mean, lifting the Stanley Cup on your ice in front of your fans is a feeling only so many have enjoyed. But the road to the 2006 championship really got jump-started 4 years earlier when the Canes put together a stunning postseason run in 2002 that laid the foundation for what was to come. Today is the story of the 2002 Carolina Hurricanes, a team with a great mix of seasoned vets and young stars on the rise, a team that was built on the go, a team that would not take no for an answer. In early December of 2001, the Canes were 12-4-3. This is, of course, in the days of the actual ties. Now, that certainly wasn't bad, but it also wasn't great. And with 4 straight losses, things were getting a bit dicey. You'll hear from a handful of Carolina players from that team, including defenseman Sean Hill, who returned to the Hurricanes in a December trade, and fan favorite Eric Cole, who was in his first NHL season.
I can remember that first week of December, we had a big gap in between games, and Mo just fed it to us, like hard practice with bag skates. And I can remember Roddy turning to Bates and I, and he's like, I'll handle this. I'll set the pace. I'll lead the way. You guys just stay on my heels, kind of thing. It was like, oh man, we're in for a day. And that was the week that this joker got traded back to Raleigh, and he comes in full of energy and everything, and we're all miserable.
They had probably the worst week of their professional careers, and I just had the best thing of my pro career just happened, me coming back to a place where I'd had success and loved my teammates and that type of thing. So I was probably a little over the top with my enthusiasm, but at that point in time they needed it. So it was a good combo.
The team that started the season was not the team that finished the season, because you come back. Hedican and Adams come in the trade from Florida for Sandis Ozolinsh, who was going the other way. So when you got there and as the team developed, Sean, did you sense that this team was putting together a group that could legitimately compete in the East?
I had a feeling that we weren't going to be an easy out, is what my thoughts were. I was coming from a really good team in St. Louis, but the team wasn't close like our team was, and got closer and closer the further we went and stuff. And when we got Hetty from Florida, great skater, really good defender, can play offense as well, and Kevin Adams obviously is. You're not going to get a better teammate, number one. You're not going to get a guy who lays his body on the line more than that guy. A guy that can walk into any room, no matter where it is, what the situation is, and he can be comfortable, command respect. And so it was really big getting both those guys. And, I think the more we moved on and week after week after week, we just started playing better and better. And we realized, Ronnie was a superstar, but at that point, he was late in his career. He was still playing at a very high level, but he wasn't a top 5 guy in the league or anything like that. But we knew our game was our team game could match up with just about anybody. We weren't going to be able to run and gun with somebody that up and down the ice track meet type of stuff. But we knew if we got to our game and we played it, that we were going to be tough to beat. And I think everybody kind of embraced that thought that if we play our team game, we're going to be a tough team to beat, and guys really grabbed onto it and ran with it.
The trade they referenced was the one that brought 2 more foundational pieces of the championship team to Raleigh. With flashy offensive defenseman Sandis Ozolinsh headed to Florida, Hurricanes GM Jim Rutherford acquired the smooth skating defenseman Brett Hedican and gritty, scrappy center Kevin Adams.
Probably first impression where you walked in and you just kind of were like, whoa, there was a close team, you could see that, but serious talent. And, we had been in the division, so obviously playing against a team we knew, but then seeing it up close with Francis and Brindamore and just the guys, O'Neill and, then the guys like Cole and Battaglia that were young at the time. I just think there was a sense of like, this might be a pretty good team that we just got traded to. We probably both felt the same way.
Hedican played for a Cup 8 years prior with the Vancouver Canucks.
For me, I was always chasing to get back to the Stanley Cup finals and getting another chance at a Stanley Cup. But I think from even walking in that locker room and feeling what I felt, it took me back to 1994 almost instantaneously. And there's one common denominator there, Adam. When I think about this, I think about Martin Jelena. He was part of the 94 team in Vancouver. He was in that locker room in Carolina. So I really had a real confident feeling about the group overall, and walking in there and seeing him and then everybody else.
Francis, now the general manager of the Seattle Kraken, was winding down a Hall of Fame career, but he was still super smart. He was an effective player, and he was smart enough to know what it means when a team acquires significant reinforcements midseason.
Anytime when you get to a position like that and, Jim adds players to your lineup, we see big solid goaltender, along with Arthur gave us, two guys we could count on and rely on, which was real good. And then, Hetty, just his skating and puck moving ability and be able to either skate it out of the zone or get it out, helped us there. And then K-Ad's is the kind of guy that you want in your team, in your locker room, right? He sacrifices everything he has to help the team win and be successful. And, I think they were just good additions to our team. They fit right into the mentality that we had that year that was just kind of worker-like. And ultimately we came close. We didn't get what we wanted, and that was disappointing. But, it certainly was a heck of a run by a great group of guys that almost accomplished what we wanted to do.
Longtime television voice John Forsland.
Well, that team was an amazing collection of young players who were just cutting their teeth, but by the time the playoffs rolled around were really important. Older players who brought a ton of credibility to the organization, to a team that needed some relevance, that needed a real move at that time, because it was so hard to get any kind of respect around the league based on the move. And even though they had a chance in the playoffs in 99 and they had the one round in 01, it wasn't really gaining the traction, I think, that everyone was expecting. And so the timing was perfect. And then it was also a general manager who was able to make some key deals in the middle of that season, which is something that, Jim Rutherford's talent as a GM, there's a lot of things that go into it, but there are very few GMs, in my opinion, in hockey that are able to tweak teams in season. It's something you'd never see today because of the salary cap and everything centers around the trading deadline. But these hockey deals were made to jumpstart a team, to bring certain guys back that the locker room needed, and it all came together in the second half. It wasn't a joyride. The regular season was way different than the 05-06 Hurricanes. This was a work in progress for most of the year until they got to the playoffs.
Again, Hedican.
I was there a week, and I remember after the first week of being there calling my wife, Christy, because she hadn't come to Carolina at the time, and I called her and I said, you know what? I said, I think this team is going to do something special. For me, it was like, looking back at a time when I really started to feel what teamwork, what, camaraderie to the next level, what sacrifice, selflessness looked like in 94 in that Vancouver team. And I saw all those qualities just bubble up to the surface when I got in that locker room for the first 7 days.
Remember what I said earlier about the Devils? Well, that was the opening round opponent for the Hurricanes. And that meant Eric Cole was going to have to, as the kids say, keep his head on a swivel.
Like, I knew what my matchup was going to be that series. I was getting sick in the locker room before the first game. The way that, Shane Willis got knocked out and Ronnie got knocked out, and just, Mr. Rutherford always kind of, talked about how, New Jersey was kind of what we were modeling, the organization after. It's, guys develop in the minors and you don't always, get a chance right away and things like that. And so when you're able to go out and defeat, the organization that's, and they've had that success under that model and everything, and then you're able to go out and get the better of them in a 7-game series, I think that was just a huge boost for our whole group.
Do you remember Kevin Week's save on John Madden? Well, if you don't, Google it, kids. It just might have been the save that ignited a franchise. Trip Tracy, TV analyst for the Hurricanes.
If Kevin Weeks doesn't make that save, you're losing that series. New Jersey was a juggernaut. They won the Stanley Cup the next year with essentially the same team, didn't they? I mean, they were stellar. You needed two goaltenders that were standing on their head in combination in Urbe and Weeks to beat that team. And then all of a sudden you had home ice because of the Southeast Division against Montreal and Toronto. So you make me try to begin to figure out, but I can't. If Kevin Weeks doesn't make that save, could the Carolina Hurricanes be in a completely different state?
Longtime television voice John Forsland.
Well, personally, what stands out is one of the great calls that I can't stand is the Kevin Weeks save. I lost it, and I guess organically that's okay. But that's one of those calls that people tell me all the time, oh, we love that overtime save by Weeksy. We love your call on that. And that's one that I cringed about for a few years afterwards. I didn't like how it sounded.
Rafalski gets it once again. Inside it goes, a man free in front. Riche, what a stop! The rebound! What a save again! Kevin Weeks!
It was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable moment because these New Jersey Devils were in a different place. They're one of the greatest organizations and teams of that era. And for the little Hurricanes to get in there and have this rivalry going with the Devils and beat the Devils and get through that defense and that goalie, who saw that one coming?
Back to the captain of that team, Ron Francis.
And we played them the year before, and obviously Willie and I didn't finish the series, but to come back and have to go through Jersey again, I believe I scored the goal in the game that knocked them out, the game-winning goal in the game that knocked them out of the playoffs. So certainly gratified to come back and do that and allow our franchise to move on. But it's always part of the process, right? Learning how to win and learning how to get over the hump. And for us, I think that was a big series win that gave us a belief and a confidence that we could move forward.
With the Devils in the rear view, it was on to Montreal to meet up with the storied Canadiens and their eventual MVP winning goaltender, Jose Theodore. That story and a major miracle after the break. Welcome back to the 25th Anniversary Canes Corner podcast. I'm Adam Gold. With the New Jersey Devils already dispatched, it was on to the conference semifinals to meet the Montreal Canadiens. The Habs weren't an offensive juggernaut, but in Jose Theodore, they had not only the Vezina Trophy winner as the league's top goalie, but also the winner of the Hart Trophy as the NHL's most valuable player. And through 3 2/3 games of the series, it looked as though he might be too much for Carolina. Longtime television voice John Forsland.
The Molson Miracle is one of the iconic moments in franchise history. And lucky enough that we were still able to be in a second round situation where we could televise it for the local market. And that game was just an unbelievable story. And to watch that come back in the third period and just to see those guys come together like they did and then oust the Canadiens.
Shot baits Battaglia, back it goes for Sammy Kapanen. Inside it's Ron Francis. Great pass, Hill scores! John Hill getting the pass from Ron Francis on the one-timer. Carolina stays put on the power play, and they finally beat Theodore. Now it's Brindamore over the line inside. Oleg Petrov is back defensively for Montreal. He'll play it off the wall. Boulis is shoved by Nick Pauline. Battaglia takes control, feigning on a shot. Now Pauline rolling it deep. Here's Brindamore. Carl Dykhouse getting to it. Battaglia has control. Inside it goes, knocked down by Brindamore. On the cycle game, here come the Canes. The pass detected by Gilmore. And the Canadiens try to clear, but don't. Held in by Brindamore. Now Battaglia walks, holds, shoots one. He scores! Short side on Theodore. Bates Battaglia has brought the Carolina Hurricanes within one. Brindamore, Cole, Battaglia, Francis, Kapanen, Hill. Kapanen walks, shoots. It's tipped just wide. Francis behind the goal. Ronnie Francis tries to make it happen. To the point it comes to Kapanen. Hammered by Hill, it's tipped. Brindamore after it. Battaglia turns, shoots. Theodore to save the rebound. Pauline and Malik on defense. Bill Lindsay out to take the face off. It's lost by Lindsay. Pauline shot. Hey, what do you say? Nick Pauline! The Carolina Hurricanes have tied the series!
Then alternate captain Rod Brindamore.
We had a bunch of power plays happen. I just remember, I felt like that anyway. I remember we got one on it to kind of go, okay, we're back, we're close. I think, if I'm right, Bates got a goal that got us right back in there, and then obviously the winner in overtime. I just remember the momentum train coming. Like once it is a real thing when you can feel it coming, and we were definitely on it in that game.
Sean Hill just inside of 4 minutes into the third, made it 3-1. 9 minutes later, Bates Battaglia brought the Hurricanes within a goal. Then with 41 seconds left, it was Eric Cole with the Canes net empty that helped pull this game into overtime, where Nick Valine would, of course, win it. Here's Hill and then Cole.
Yeah, I won't forget that. That was a cool game. I mean, we were, for all intents and purposes, everyone outside of our room thought we're beat for the game and most likely probably the series. And I get chills right now just thinking about it. But just the way it all went down and turned around, and that was a cool moment in sports for me.
They were bulletproof playing in front of him when he was playing the way he was, because he was really hard to beat. And from that moment, in that third period, the rest of the series, we thumped them. I think it was 5-1 at home, and then we put them to bed pretty early in Montreal too. So it was all downhill from there.
Theodore, as I said, was the MVP of the league. But from there, woof. 4 goals in the third plus overtime, 5 more in Game 5 in Raleigh. Then he yielded 8 in the series clincher back at Molson. Here's John Forsland.
Just broke the floodgates open. It ruined what was a spectacular season for Jose Theodore. We have Doug Gilmour slamming the penalty box and the glass breaking and, all these things. And then you're going it was called then Molson Center, and you're going into that building. And it's spiritual. That sounds probably over the top, but listen, I know when I go into that building, even though it's not the old Forum, for some reason it still feels like it. And so it's not a stretch to say that it is a cathedral for hockey.
Brett Hedican.
I just remember always feeling so confident with a group, even though you were down in a series, down in a game. There's a certain level of teams that when you have that ability to know that the work has been done throughout the course of the season, and the confidence and the selflessness among a group, when you have those moments in a series, there's not a lot of panic. And I felt like that's what it felt like in Montreal. It felt like there wasn't a lot of panic, even though being down 3-0 going into that third, there still was a confidence about us. There was guys leaning into one another and a real sureness the way we stepped onto the ice, knowing that we could still do this. And I think those are the things I can remember more than just specific things in games. It's funny the way my brain feels and the way it works about that, but that's kind of where it goes.
Hill and Cole talked about the perception of the Hurricanes throughout that postseason. Hill first.
To be honest, I think in any of those 3 series, if you would ask people around the league, I don't think anyone was thinking we were going to win besides, again, the guys in our room. And that's what, made it so special. And Toronto they were loaded pretty good that year. And, it was kind of cool. It was always us versus everyone in our mindset, us versus the world. But it was kind of cool how after Jersey, then it was, when we're coming down to it and we're, knowing this is going to happen, we're going to beat Montreal. And then we, to think it's Toronto next, it was, us versus Canada basically. And which is pretty cool because I don't remember exactly who was coming out of the West, who Detroit had to beat, but I
Colorado.
Yeah, so for us to knock Canada right off the whole thing is pretty cool feeling, especially when, like Colsey said, it's their national pastime, it's their their religion, it's everything to them, and for a pesky little group of mutts out of Raleigh to come in and first of all beat the Canadians who have fans across all of Canada, and then same with Toronto to beat both of them who both have so many more fans outside their own, province than they do in. Basically, sometimes it was pretty neat for us to be able to do that.
I don't think that anyone gave us very much credit. I think New Jersey especially, I can remember a quote from Bobby Holik being like, hockey mecca or, NASCAR mecca or something like that, when he was asked the question about having to face us as opposed to Toronto in the first round. So I think maybe New Jersey didn't really give us as much credit and kind of, thought that they were going to be able to just, turn it on and just take a series from us, and then you get to Montreal and they just beat the number 1 seed in Boston. So their whole media market, I mean, it's how it is in Montreal. When it's a high, it's really, really high. And the fans are all right up there with it. And I think that, their belief, I think that the team had a really strong belief in themselves as well because of Theodore. And so I don't think that they really gave us too much credit. But I think when it came to the Toronto series, I feel like the Toronto team, I think they felt like they could beat us, but they had a ton of guys that had been out with injuries and things like that, and they gave us enough respect that for getting there, for getting to that conference final with them. So I think that series was, I think that series was definitely, it was the most difficult for me for sure. But I think that one really kind of took a toll on our group.
Fun fact about the 2002 Eastern Conference Finals between the Canes and the Maple Leafs. The most goals scored in any game was 3 total. Here's Trip Tracy.
I'll always think of the conference final, Adam, as good of a goaltending battle as I've ever seen between Artur Zerbe and Curtis Joseph. As stellar of goaltending at both ends as I've ever seen. Jeff O'Neill, the eye of the storm in Game 3. And then that also, too, in the big picture, because it was Toronto, that you had all these Leafs fans come down and probably come down with an attitude like, why are we going to hockey in North Carolina? And they all walked away, because they had identified and fallen in love with this tailgating experience. Ron McLean and Don Cherry, I think in talking to them, the friends that they are, that's when they started to, really say, this is a pretty cool spot.
John Forsland.
And it's the Maple Leafs now. And it just seemed like the hurdle was getting higher, each step. And everyone was expecting this has got to be the end of the road. This has got to be the end of the road, and the Leafs have to go back. And in the atmosphere surrounding it between the two fan bases, the people that were traveling, from Toronto to get tickets, to come to Raleigh and tailgate outside, it was spectacular. And our friends at Hockey Night in Canada that were covering the series, to give it respect, to give Raleigh respect, it was a big step. All that stuff was happening away from the game, but on the ice, it was a remarkable, one of the best playoff series I've ever covered and witnessed, and it was just great.
I told you the 2002 run had a lot. So much so that we're going to need another week. Where we're headed after the break. Welcome back to the 25th Anniversary Canes Corner podcast. I am Adam Gold. The 2002 playoffs were a 2-month thrill ride. From Kevin Weeks' remarkable save to keep the Hurricanes in front of the Devils and eventually vanquish the Monsters from New Jersey, to the miracle at Molson, we head to the conference finals for a truly remarkable showdown. It's the only time the Hurricanes and Maple Leafs have ever met in the playoffs. And it was one of the greatest series in the last 25 years, maybe longer. But even though it was all about goaltending, this series might be best remembered for Jeff O'Neill's overtime goal that gave Carolina a Game 3 win. Earlier in the night, he took a puck to the eye, but refused to give in. Eric Cole and Sean Hill reminisce.
O's goal in OT with the black eye. Just you come back to the bench and, Pete's got the ice inside, a latex glove, and he's trying to keep the swelling out of there. I mean, at one point, I think there was a debate about cutting him, but but I don't think the doctor wanted that. He didn't want that scar. So, I mean, it was, it was just, for him to stay in, especially because he had struggled a little bit in the New Jersey series, but to the point where in the Montreal series, I mean, he's the guy, playing on a third line role, winning the faceoff that, Nicky Walleen puts in the back of the net for the OT winner. So like O was a little bit in the doghouse in the Montreal series, and to go back to his hometown and play the way he did, for the remainder of the playoffs for us, he was incredible. And that game obviously had a huge boost, for him personally, I think.
I think that was a huge part of it. Him with the black eye, like Colsey said, was kind of, very indicative of what the series was like. I think it was more of a battle than the other two series. All the series were physical back then, but, I remember, Roberts, Corson, Tucker, those guys played hard, and they were finishing everything. And everybody finishes everything in the playoffs, but not to the extent that these guys did.
Domi,
yeah. I mean, they're, like I said, and they had, Ponikarovsky was a big body, and when he wanted to bang, and Antropov, and I mean, they were heavy. They were heavy, across their lineup. And, I think that's probably the biggest thing is how physical the series was. And that, kind of transitions right to with the look,
We will pick up the series against Toronto next time. This 25th anniversary Canes Corner podcast series is part of the Capital Broadcasting Podcast Network, thanks to our friends at the Aluminum Company of North Carolina, with special assistance from Rusty Helser. I am Adam Gold, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Canes Corner podcast with Adam Gold.
Yeah, I want to drive the Zamboni. Yes, I do.
The Canes Corner podcast is a part of the Capital Broadcasting Podcast Network.